I'm working on a new quadcopter, and I'm basing it on the Anycopter hub. You can download this template at flitetest.com, and they also sell this in kits. I cut this template out on some Lexan. I like using Lexan because it's very easily available, and it's very durable. Don't mistake this for plexiglass. It's not the same thing. Lexan is not plexiglass. Lexan is polycarbonate, which is significantly tougher. I'm using wooden booms. I'm using number 6 screws. I should say bolts, I mean. And I drilled out the holes based on the pattern in a quadcopter design using a number 1/8 drill bit, and it makes it perfect for when you're screwing this bolt through. It will hold by itself, so it'll self-tighten, and then once you get some lock nuts on it, it'll be nice and solid. A slight modification though I did make to this frame was I made it foldable, and what I did was I drilled some holes right beside where the booms will situate when it's in the X configuration, and I drilled some holes on each side, and then now it will fold. It makes for great storage, and it makes it easier to carry it and move it around to get it places. So next I'm going to show you how to create the power distribution on the inside to hook up the ESCs and the motors. I'll mention that the motors that I am using are Hobby King Prop Drive 2826 1200 kV motors running on Hobby King 20 amp ESCs flashed with simonk, and I have a separate video on how I flash these with simonk, and I can post a link in the description below too. I've mounted some landing gear with zip ties. This is made out of some 4-inch PVC pipe, and I have another video posted on how to make those, and I'll post it in the description below. Next, I'm going to create a power distribution point for all of these red power leads coming off of the ESCs, and then I'm going to do the same for the black. What I envision I'm going to probably do is take some of these 3.5mm bullet connectors, and I'm going to solder a piece of wire between it and then a piece of wire off of it to create another one for the positive. So it'll probably look like this. It'll look like that, and then the T, and then 2 more to connect these two, and then a lead wire will come off of it, which will connect to the battery. So I've created 2 wiring harnesses for power distribution with the 3.5mm gold bullets. I've put leads on it. So I have a positive, and I have a negative, and I have also spliced in some pigtails for a JST connector. So the way it'll look assembled is there'll be an XT60 connector on this, and then the JST on this, and this can be used to power FPV, or I usually use it for a voltage alarm. So I'm going to wire it up. We'll mount the motors, and then we'll hook up the flight controller. So I've made this little plate just to cover up the wiring, so that way I can mount my flight controller on the top, right like that. All the wires can plug in. I haven't decided what flight controller I'm going to use. Right now I have the Ardu Pilot, but I might try the KK2 on it. But gives lots of room for mounting. So I've stuck some Velcro onto the hub. This direction's forward. I have my back cables coming out through the rear. It folds quite nicely. I have some nuts put on now, so it's nice and stiff. I'm going to run the KK2 board on this as a test. So I have Velcro on the back of this and it's stuck on. And there's lots of guides out there to wire up the KK2, so I won't really bother to go really in depth on how to do it. But basically you have your receiver, and you have your, starting from the top of my receiver anyway, it goes down 1 through 8. So 1 corresponds to on the left hand side of the KK2. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I have 5 on my receiver. I'm going to stick my receiver off to the side. I'm going to start with the first cable. That's 1. Your live wire, your signal I mean, your signal wire is always facing inward. Your ground wire is always facing outward. So I'm just going to go through real quick and wire these up. And now I'm going to wire up the motors. On a KK2 for a quad, this is motor 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to take my ESC for motor 1, plug it into the top pin. Again, the white wire or yellow wire facing inward. Or another way to think of it is the ground wire always faces to the outside of the board. Alternatively, if you're not sure of the motor layout, the KK2 will tell you. You just need to give power to the first pin on this side of your ESC. As long as your ESC has a built-in back. So, it's all wired up. I have a battery. I'm just going to power up the system just so I can load the firmware, or I should say load the motor layout. So I'm going to go in. If you go down to load motor layout, I'm going to load Quadcopter. Oops, that's not it. That's dual copter. Here it is, Quadcopter in X mode. Are you sure? And see, it shows the motor layout 1, 2. Oh, sorry, I was mistaken. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. Okay, I have the ESC's the motor layout wired correctly now. So this was 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4 in a clockwise, starting with 1 in clockwise direction. I'm going to turn on my receiver, and then on the KK2 you want to do the receiver test, and you want to take, as you can see right now, it's 5, 4, 0, and 3, and it corresponds with the aileron, elevator, throttle, and rudder. You're going to zero those out, and you do it with the trims. On your receiver. So in this situation, for the aileron, put it down to 0. Rudder. There, everything's zeroed out now. The next thing we want to do, I'm going to set my ACC calibration. You want to make sure to place the copter on a very level surface. My table is level, so I'm going to do the check, do the calibration on this. I'll zoom in so you can see. So it says place it level and then push continue. And then it'll calibrate and it'll tell you that it's done. The only other thing I'm going to set up is the self-leveling. And for that, you go under mode settings and you set self-level to an auxiliary. I have it turned on to one of my auxiliary switches on my controller. And as you can see, self-level's on, off. I want to mention a couple things about how your ESCs and your motors work for those beginners out there. Your ESC gets wired into your motor and it's a 3-phase motor, so it doesn't matter which way these wires are connected. It'll spin either clockwise or counterclockwise, and if you want to reverse it, you switch any 2 wires. So if this was spinning clockwise and I wanted to spin counterclockwise, you would take your red and your black and you could switch them, or you could take your red and your yellow and switch them. It's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter which 2. As long as you switch 2 of them, the motor will reverse the rotation. I forgot to mention on the KK2 in the setup, when you go into your show motor layout, it'll show the rotation as well on the screen for each motor. So 1 goes in a clockwise direction, motor 2 goes in a counterclockwise, mode 3 goes in a clockwise, and motor 4 goes in a counterclockwise. So the way I like to test it is I just I'll arm it, and you arm it on the KK2 by holding to the left, down and to the left on your throttle, and you see a red light comes on. So what I'm going to do is arm it and just check the rotation of each motor. What you can do is put a piece of tape on each motor. I have some tape, just going to put it on each motor. This will just tell me which direction they're spinning. Wow, I really only need to switch one. So this was spinning this way. Incidentally, I will tidy up this wiring because I have such short booms. That's why there's this extra bit of wire, and I have these connectors. What I'll probably do is maybe turn the motors and shorten them up a little bit, or I might just slice them once I know this works well and just connect them. But it is nice having, I like having all bullet connectors, so if I want to swap an ESC to another copter, or if I have one go bad, it's really easy to replace. So I'll arm it again. Okay, we should be good. Next is to tie up some of these wires so you don't flop into the propellers, and put the props on it, and we can take it for a maiden. I want to mention one other thing regarding your ESCs. Your ESCs have a max throttle point and a minimum throttle point that you need to set. Now, there's different ways to set them depending on the make but generally they set all about the same. Now, with the KK2, what you can do is you unplug your battery, zoom out I mean, and on your transmitter you want to put the throttle to max, connect your battery, and you have about 1 to 1.5 seconds to hold down on the 1 and the 4 button. So I'm going to connect, hold down one on the 1 and the 4, and what it'll do is a throttle pass through, and that will allow me to set the high and the low points for my throttle. What I'll do is set it to high and plug it in, hold down. Now it says throttle pass through. Make that out. You have to keep holding it down, and now right now my throttle's all the way to the top. Now I'm going to bring it all the way to the bottom, and then hear it beep twice, and then it makes that long tone. Let go, and your ESCs all have been calibrated at once instead of having to calibrate each one by one. There's probably better guides out there. This is just a really quick and dirty overview. So next we'll put some props on it and let's take it out. Before I put the props on it, one thing you can test to see if your board is actually working correctly is arm it, and with the props off of it, spool up the throttle. As you can see, all the motors now also start all at once. And then you hear it, when I dip this motor down, it speeds up, and you can hear it. So the copter is put together, and we're going to take it for its maiden flight, but I just wanted to make mention that I put the props on, and it uses clockwise spinning props and counterclockwise spinning props. And when you put the props on, you also want to make sure that the writing faces upward, and that is the correct way of installing it. Also on the bottom, I installed a battery strap for the battery, so I can just strap that in. So we're going to take it out and go for its maiden flight. Just wanted to mention you should also have a voltage monitor, so you know when your battery's getting low, and this has a little alarm on it, and it'll notify you when your battery's getting low, so you know to land. Right now I have a fully charged battery, but when this one starts getting low, it'll start beeping and the lights will change colors. And this one's good, just plugs right into the balance connector on your LiPo battery. So this is the maiden of the Quadcopter KK2. With auto level on. You can see it flies nice and stable. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and good luck on your build.